Hello everyone, welcome to another video. So in this one I want to talk about health. Health is something that when we have it, it feels good, but we sometimes forget how good it feels. And when we lose that sense of health and vitality, you really become desperate and you really desperately pray for that health and for some kind of transformation. And a lot of the time it's when people are in that state of sickness and that state of dis-ease that they then hit a transformation point. They hit a turning point where they realise that there must be another way. There must be something else. And it's those moments that become blessings that teach us that what we've been doing hasn't led us to a healthy place, both mentally and spiritually, emotionally. And so I want to talk about ways to be healthy, ways to holistically balance the health of our system. And the thing that's important to realize is it's not just the physical health of the body. It's not necessarily just the diet or the sleep or the water or the nutrition or the exercise, which obviously are important, and I want to talk about that as well. But the other aspects is the mental health, the emotional health. You know, are your emotions in a calm place? Do you have a sort of a mastery over your emotions where you're not allowing yourself to be pulled by emotional triggers and you're not leaping into anger, which generally lowers your overall feeling of wellness? When you're feeling lots of anger and stress and worry, it might not necessarily be a physical symptom, but in that kind of the emotional energy that's being released, it's toxifying the body, and obviously holistically it's causing dis-ease. And then there's the spiritual health, which is not necessarily the idea of praying and meditating and reading spiritual books, although obviously those things contribute to this. But the spiritual health that people need to understand more is that when you're finding the purpose, the thing that you love, the passion, and the thing that brings you the most fulfillment, when you're aligning with that, and when you're making your life full of dreams and chasing passions, you're really aligning with the spiritual health. And when you're going to, say, a job that you hate, doing things that you don't like with people that you don't resonate with, engaging in hobbies and addictions and habits that don't feel right and don't feel happy, you end up in a space where your life becomes very dull and very boring, and there's an emptiness and there's this desperation of wishing for something to change, but it's so comfortable. You're in such a comfortable, convenient habit, and people become very paralyzed by this, which is why sudden transformations, whether it's something going on in the world or something going on in your own in your life, you know, people doing things, or your health challenges, people get these opportunities to have a big shake up and change things. And I reckon over the last few years people have had a lot of those opportunities, and they're going to continue to get more of them, where you say, how can I improve my spiritual health? How can I become more aligned with who I really am? How can I know myself more? Because one of the things that I found is I've always been someone who's not really bought into the traditional, go to school, study, get a job, get married, and get retired and die kind of lifestyle, which has been a particular blueprint that a lot of people have taken on as their own and then lived it out. And obviously at the end of that, when you become the perfect model of that particular way of life, a lot of people get to the end of it and realise that there was something else that they wanted to do, but they weren't really allowed to within that blueprint. It's not that those particular things are bad or that they're negative or pointless in any way. But if you have particular passions and joys and things that you want to do, if you have something that really calls to you, And for me, that thing was always the vegan message, and the message of love and compassion, and the idea of trying to help others, whether it's the animals or whether it's people, who are suffering and struggling. When you have that call that really just energizes you every time you think about it, not being able to follow that because, say, you have a busy job and you don't have enough free time, and you have children and you have commitments and things you have to do and people you have to please, you get into a space where your passion just sort of dissolves, and you're feeling empty, and you're constantly looking for things externally to fill that place. So you might have this feeling of, I want to travel and change the world and do positive things, like, say, the people that you've seen. And instead of actually doing it, you sort of satisfy that urge slightly by, say, watching films. And the films get the emotions bubbling up, and they get you to go on this big journey, and you feel like loads is happening. But really all you've ever done is sat in front of a screen and looked at the pixels, and you've not had the actual visceral experience, and you've not made the difference, and you've not experienced the growth that, say, the characters in the story seem to be experiencing. So it's like watching travel videos. It might be a nice motivation to say, actually, yeah, I would like to do that, or no, I wouldn't like to do that, it doesn't look that fun really. Just say watching films and shows about things. At the end of it, you're just sat in front of a screen, and you're just sat in a sofa, and the experience that you've had is just sitting in front of a screen, and it hasn't been to have those experiences. And so I want to really encourage people for their health, not just to have the nutritious superfoods and the smoothies and the, say, time in nature, but also to look at what is it that you love, and how can you allow yourself to do more of it. And it might be that within your particular lifestyle and the way you've kind of built your life to be, there isn't hours and hours and hours every day that you can set aside to be able to do something that you love, whether it's some kind of art thing or creative thing. But now is the time, if you have those creative ideas and you have those creative projects, to sit down and say, what are they, and how can I find some way of beginning it? And there is always a way to make it happen. People don't necessarily think that these small steps are big enough and interesting enough to try, but it might be something as simple as saying, well, every time I sit down at a particular desk, before I do anything, I'm going to spend 1 minute, and I'm going to say, if you want to do pictures or art, I'm going to draw a picture, just a little doodle on a little post-it note. And if you make that a priority, you do that every day, by the end of, say, a year, you've got 365 of these pictures. And what do you do with the 365 pictures? You don't have to do anything. But there'll be a part of you that will be healthier because you've done that. You don't have to share it with anyone, and you don't have to sell it. You don't have to show anyone. You can literally rip them up and throw them in the bin. But just the act of doing that will take you closer to what you love. And when you find out what you love, then you become able to then generate new ideas in relation to that, and say, well, actually, I might not necessarily be able to, say, make a job or a career out of post-it note doodles that take me 1 minute. Although you probably could with something like YouTube. I mean, there's always a way. But you could teach workshops, 1 minute doodle workshops. Here we go. That's what I'm doing now. So you might not necessarily do something with that, but out of doing that every single day, eventually, you might do it more than 1 minute. You might end up doing 2 a day. There might be those days where you go, I can't help myself, I'm going to have to do 5 of them. Or you might start building a load of characters and stories, because if you're doing it every day, you suddenly get these random ideas pop into you. And if you have a nice idea that's that's sort of come to you, and you go, actually, this is something that I could I could take these characters that I've drawn on my post-it notes, flesh them out a little bit, or digitalize them. You can do some kind of Photoshop art. And if I have these pictures, I could put them onto postcards, and I can make these prints, and I can sell them at the local art gallery or the local craft shop, and I can take them to there. I could sell them online somewhere, or I could just give them to friends, or I can donate them to some cause or something, and I can do something with that. Because suddenly, when you start doing things, there's the new opportunities come up, and you go, actually, there is a way out of the life that I don't like. And you start very slowly and gently building these habits that magnetize you to the kinds of things that you love. So I think I've been fortunate in that I've always maintained this sort of connection to the purpose. I've always kept that as my main focal point in life, over the physical health, even the mental health and the emotional health. I said, this is the priority. Does it make me happy? And is this the thing that I want to be doing? And is this good for the world? And I've always been very close to that, which has meant I haven't got too stuck into some of these rigid systems and big responsibilities that people dive into a little bit carelessly when they're young. But it's all good fun, and people learn a lot from whatever they do. So mental health is a big thing, isn't it? And there's a lot of things you can do in terms of, there's books about these sorts of things, and there's lots of practices that people recommend to get to this point where you feel like you love yourself, and you feel like you love your life, and you feel positive and confident. Really, I think with the mental health side of things, the big challenge that a lot of, especially Western people, are facing is people have been trained into the sacrifice way of life, which is to put everyone above yourself and to be nice and generous and do things for the well-being and the goodness for others, even if it's to the detriment of yourself. To be overly generous and to not look after yourself, as if to do that makes you a bad person. And the word selfish has been used to really prevent people from engaging in the habits and the routines of self-care and self-love. And a lot of, say, mums, for example, over the last long time, have been trained into putting the family above themselves and not taking that time out for themselves to rest and to look after themselves, and not giving themselves the compliments and meeting the needs of their own kind of inner child and inner space, and not looking after their health in a lot of ways. So obviously when mothers practice this because they think that's what makes them a good mother, they end up teaching and demonstrating the same kind of principles to their daughters, and then their daughters then teach the same things to their daughters, and then the cycle keeps continuing until someone eventually has to say, no, there must be another way. And I think this is the generation where a lot of people are beginning to say, no, I refuse, I don't want to do this anymore, this doesn't make me happy, and it didn't make my parents happy, and there must be another way. And there is, and the self-love and the self-care and the being gentle with yourself and gentle with others, and just being honest and authentic, and also not caring so much about what other people think above how you feel and what you think. There's a kindness factor to it, where you want to help others and you want to be kind to others, but you must first be kind and loving to yourself for your kindness and generosity to be authentic. One of the things I've realized along with this journey of these self-loving practices that I've gone through has been to say that anything that I think I want to give to someone else, I must first give it to myself and find some way of satisfying the thing that I want within that, so that I don't give out of an emptiness, out of a lack, and then eventually build resentment when they don't give me back something. Because people think that they're capable of this unconditional love idea, but there's a lot of conditions people put on their giving, not just with the physical things, but just with acts of kindness. And if you're willing to give something without needing a thank you, without needing the person to use it or to enjoy it, without the person giving you something back at the appropriate occasion. So it's like with a birthday present. If they didn't give you a birthday present, how would you feel? And that's when you start imagining these different scenarios, you start to look at actually, part of it is that we're kind of tied into certain traditions and we all feel obligated to do certain actions. And the love and the generosity hasn't necessarily come out of our heart, it's come out of a sense of obligation, a sense of we have to do this, otherwise we'll be seen as bad people and we won't be seen as loving, and we don't want to fracture a relationship because the society says that if you don't give and don't be generous at this particular occasion, like mid-December time, and in the birthdays and all the different traditions, Chinese New Year, you can... you're going to be disowned and everyone will hate you if you don't participate. But I've not participated in these things for a long time, and you sort of dip into bits of it and you realise that it's so much more joyful to just give people when you have something meaningful to give, whether it's time and energy, money, physical things, gifts in some way. Give it to them in the moment when they genuinely need it and you're able to provide it. You don't necessarily have to go out of your way in a way that's expensive or draining for you. But if you find a moment where actually you have the free time to help and they are in need of that help, you give in a way that's really meaningful, and it means a lot more than, oh well, of course you'd give me something because it's this tradition day, and there's slightly less specialness to that. So if you want to be more mentally healthy, to get back onto the health conversation, it's beginning to build a more positive relationship with yourself, and to look at the thoughts that are going on in your mind, and really being observant, not necessarily critical, but observant. And when you can be observant, you can say, there's some quite negative, judgmental thoughts going on, and these don't make me feel good. And once you start to identify the things that keep going, so it might be to say, every time you look in the mirror, there's certain words that say come up, or certain feelings that come up, and certain energies that you feel where you say, actually, there's something that isn't right about this. Because the mentally healthy version would be every time you look in the mirror, you go, wow, it's this beautiful human being, in the sweetest sense. Like how a child who hasn't been trained in the world's judgment would see you. They'd just see you as like, wow, that wonder. And if you can do that, then you're in a good mentally healthy place in that particular area, And there's lots of different aspects of life. But it's starting to look at what are those thoughts, and when you can sit and write them down, you can figure out what is it that we can do about them. And the biggest thing that I realise is to say that you think that you have to take all these thoughts seriously, and people who practice meditation and get into these kind of different spiritual practices, it's about saying, it's like your mind is the sky and the thoughts are the clouds. And only if you want to hold on to the cloud and see it as your own is it your problem. Otherwise you can just let it drift by, and you can start to disown certain thought patterns, which is very nourishing and empowering, where you start to say, I command my mind to be at peace. These thoughts I do not want. These thoughts are not my own voice, they are the voice of fear. These kinds of thoughts do not bring me peace and do not make me happy. So I will release them, and I do not want them anymore, and I will keep releasing them. And when you start to command your mind to be still and to be calm, and when the negative, fearful thoughts start to come and you say, I do not want this. When you say it fully with all your might, then you start to build a power and a sense of taking your control back over your mind and your thoughts. And when you start to say, these thoughts don't bring me peace, therefore I don't want them, and I'm not going to do anything to empower them anymore. And you just say, I release it over and over and over again, and you forgive yourself for those thoughts coming up, and you realize that they're not really yours. A lot of these voices are the voices of programming that's come into you. And you don't want that programming, so you can begin to release those and then say, well, this thought I do not want, and instead I choose another thought. And the other thought that you can choose, say, could be, for example, if there's some kind of body-related thing when you're looking in the mirror, you could say, I do not want this thought. This thought doesn't bring me happiness. It's the voice of programming and advertising and fear and shame, and I don't want it, and I have no interest in it, and I'm going to choose consciously in this moment, and I'm going to keep trying in every moment I can to choose the thought that is. And then you choose and you say, I am a beautiful being full of love, and everyone I interact with is blessed with my presence. You know, you say something like that, you start to get these little affirmations that resonate with you. I mean, some people get into these very, very spiritually driven mantras and affirmations that don't necessarily resonate with a lot of people, but there is a place where you find something that does. I always found, as I was kind of going through these, some things sounded so lame I couldn't imagine myself saying them. But then I just thought, well, what is the kind of thing that I would want to say to myself if I was programming and brainwashing myself into a new way of thinking? How would I do that? And then I started to find the answers of, the vocabulary that feels good to me. So yeah, mentally healthy habits, I have much to share on that topic, but just to dip into it. So yeah, at the same time with the emotions, people feel like they're a slave to the emotions, whether it's things like, I feel sleepy, I feel hungry, I feel angry, I feel sad. As if these things just come over you and they're, it's without your control. And obviously these big emotions are coming because there's a particular habit and association you built with certain things. But as I've found, especially with, say, when you start to focus on gratitude, the idea of, what am I thankful for? What is it that's good? How can I see the best in this day or in the things that are in my life, which is a really good thing to go through. And as I look at the focus on gratitude, I realise I can fuse that emotion and that feeling of gratitude with anything that happens. And so the perception that comes in handy a lot of the time is anything that goes wrong, I'm grateful for it. And why? Because it's an opportunity for me to become a better teacher, become a better person, become more positive. This problem becomes I become better at overcoming problems. I become stronger as a person. And so, thank you for the problems. Thank you for the lesson. The lessons have helped me grow. And as you start to practice that positive perception on everything, the emotions dissolve very quickly. Rather than feeling dread and sadness and guilt, you go gratitude, because it's a good lesson and I'm probably going to need this lesson. And the way I see it is by having these lessons mastered through my own experience, even if the experience was challenging, it means that now I've really cracked that thing. I will now be the perfect teacher for others who are struggling and working through it. And I have the experience and I have the understanding of how to overcome the experience that then becomes this beacon that shows everyone that there is another way. People who are lost and confused, I can say, here is how you can just get yourself out of it. And so what a beautiful opportunity. It's like being vegan for a long time. You just say, I feel so good and amazing and I want everyone else to know how great this is, and I feel so on track with my life just because I've made these choices and I've been congruent and I've shared it, and and I just feel physically very healthy and feel very, just happy. Because everything's great, So yeah, it's about the balance, about the holistic approach, rather than the thing about, say, something like supplements, which isn't it's not a negative thing, and it's not a pointless thing, and I don't discourage the supplement use, because it's the idea of, if you feel like you need a particular thing, and people get really into I need this vitamin and I need this mineral and I need more of this and my body needs this, and you can get very particular in that. But the idea that one vitamin will solve everything is kind of missing the bigger picture of this holistic sense of all the things that you're doing in your life. It's like saying I'm say insomnia, what people call insomnia. I'm not able to sleep. I feel restless. Well, the solution of that would be to say, in the extreme, to say taking a sleeping drug that the drug dealers, aka the doctors, give to people, and you take that drug and then it allows you to allows your body just knocks out, and then you're able to sleep, and that solves that. But then it's saying that's one very narrow-minded way of saying this drug just kind of, the symptom is being dealt with rather than the overall cause of it. And so if you get to the cause of it, you go, well, what are all the things that I'm doing in my life that's leading to this feeling of not being able to go to sleep at night and feeling restless and feeling uncomfortable? And one of the things might be caffeine. If you're having any caffeine, it's going to interact with your sleep and it's going to make your general overall mood a bit different. So it's something to be aware of. So if it's something that, if you're struggling with being able to sleep and there's some kind of caffeine, take all of it out and let go of the addiction. You can do it gently so you don't go into a state of panic, and you can find alternatives. But and then it might be the screen time. If you're spending more than, say, a couple of hours in front of a screen in the day, then you're probably looking at the screens too much. As much as it's become very normalized, this amount of the blue light and all the different things entering into your eyes, going into your body and your system, and it has a agitating effect. There's a sort of an agitation that comes, especially before the sleep time. I think probably 2 or 3 hours before sleep, it's best not to engage in screen-related activities. It's better to have a relaxing bath and give yourself some love, and maybe do some stretching, and reading a book and writing out the things you love and envisioning your ideal life, and doing these kind of I guess you'd say old-fashioned practices that people did before they had screens, and then that's going to give you a better quality of sleep. It might be one of those things, what's going on in your mind? Are you having a lot of worries and thoughts about things that are negative? Do you need to sit down and talk to someone about these kinds of things? Do you need to sit down and write down your feelings and figure out a solution? Is there something that you've been putting off that you're worrying about that's kind of at the back of your mind, and that's kind of keeping you a bit on edge? And there's a lot of these kinds of different factors that come in, and when you start to address them, it's a bit like eating before you go to sleep. If you've got this healthy, balanced way of living in your day, and you haven't been busy and overworked during the day, because obviously that keeps your mind stimulated and keeps your body in this kind of like, we're at war kind of feeling. If you start to address that in a more balanced way, I think most people would generally find these things start to fall away. But it's more a case of when I would suggest these sorts of things to someone, they wouldn't be able to make those changes because the things that those particular habits are covering up in their life is just too difficult for them to look at that particular point. It's the idea of, if I stop looking at all of the screens, I'll feel lonely, and then the loneliness is the issue that you need to really work on, and that's really the big thing. And this whole lack of sleep thing is just to do with running away from something, and it all gets very, very deep when you start delving into it. But sleep is a nice thing to get right. And I think I always like to see going to sleep and waking up as like, it's like the transition to a new life. Like I've just been born at the beginning of the day and everything's new and fresh. And the whole day, I can just fill that day with everything I'd like, and it's just like a whole life. And what would I do if I had a whole life and had to do it in a day? And it's like, you start to make every day very precious. And that's why I'm sharing these kinds of things, because it's this is what I love. I just love sharing the things that that mean something to me. And and it brings me a lot of joy to connect with people and see the transformations that people go through as they start to think about things more deeply, and obviously the different aspects of health. So it's like if you're at the end of the day and you're just rounding up, you almost imagine it's the end of your life and you're just drifting into the sleep space, and you just go, oh, you know, what's my last thought going to be? Because the Tibetans, I think, they say that be careful of what the last thoughts you have before you leave your body, because those thoughts are the things that will determine where you go. So it's like if your thoughts are of, you know, love and joy and gratitude, you're going to go to a land of, you know, love and gratitude and things, and you know, positive, happy place. But if you're sat there with regret and resentment and fear and what's going to go on, and you know, as opposed to the acceptance, you're more likely to go to a place where those thoughts just continue on, and you're just like, you know, you drift out of the body, and then boom, you know, something's happening, and I'm still worried about it, and you just keep being worried for a long time. So if you think about it in terms of sleep being that just release into, you know, something's, you're surrendering into the space, and what your last thought's going to be. And if you've just been looking at a screen or a news show before you go to bed, you're probably not going to have a very restful sleep. I really want to encourage everyone to look at how much news, whether it's from social media or televisions, that they consume, because these are big propaganda machines, and people have been trained into thinking that if they don't watch these things, they don't know what's happening. But these aren't really real things that are happening. They're just a series of images and stories and perceptions that have a particular agenda and are there to direct people into more fear and panic and worry and war, and to get people's energy system and mental, spiritual, emotional health to go down. And the more time people spend in front of these televisions and they look at the news and they engage in these stories, the worse their health will be. So I'd like to urge everyone to stop as much as they can, to try and transition away from these things, and to spend the days, especially before bed, filled with more positive and more happy and things that bring you joy. Because if you're focused on the things that you love, your subconscious mind, as you're sleeping, is getting to work on making that more of a reality in your head. And then once it's there in your mind, you're able to take that then into your physical life and into the next day, and then you're able to create more of it, as opposed to looking at images of fear and of sickness and of pain and suffering and wars, and taking those images and seeing them as important and as real and believing in them. And if you start to take these images as your own, then your dream space is going to be filled on, how can I prepare for war? And if you're preparing for battle and problems and issues and challenges, your mind says, well, how can we create more defenses against those issues? And then you start to live in a very defensive life, where your way of life is constantly fearful of someone hurting you, because that's all you've ever seen on the screens. But when you start to go out into nature, which is the other thing that I wanted to talk about, which is really good for people's health, the nature gives you this balance, and it gives you this connection, and the sunlight and the wind blowing on you, and the natural waters and the rains and the sounds of the birds and the animals, all these energies and sort of, you know, beautiful healing sounds, they all kind of come into you. You know, people have sound healing. I really love the sound healing things. I have a friend who does a lot of he does gong baths, like the gong sounds and the Tibetan healing bowls and the different kind of sound frequency healing. And as I experienced this, I realized how powerful it is as I start to go into these big deep spaces, and you know, on a cellular level, things are getting unlocked and things are being released, and it's very powerful. And I really respect these practices that people go through, you know, training into them and teaching sound healing. But really the simplest, most beautiful sound healing available to everyone everywhere is just going out into nature, finding some way of going into nature and making that a priority, and just allowing all those natural sounds, whether it's the ocean or the wind or the waters or the birds or the insects and the animals and the things. I'm really fortunate that I've lived in a countryside area for a lot of my life, and I've always made that a priority. But if you're not able to get into that space, find some kind of way, even if it's a simple kind of local park, to just be grounded, kind of get your skin, your hands and your feet on the ground and just feel that connection to the earth, and feel the connection to the sun, feel grounded down, rooted down into the earth, and energized by the sun and the energy from the stars as well, and the moon. And just let all these natural elements wash over you. And I think a lot of people who struggle with health in a lot of ways would really benefit from this. What do they call it? Schumann resonance, the energies of the energies of the earth and the sounds of nature. So I want to encourage everyone to be in nature as much as possible, because it's beautiful. And one of the things I've enjoyed most, especially when I was in Japan, I was on a tea farm for a while. And I was there, it was like tea and vegetables, and we were growing things, and I learned a lot of skills, and it was like picking up logs and just carrying things and bicycling around, and there was a beach nearby, and we'd just be like smashing up rubble and planting tea everywhere, and digging up things, and there was a bamboo forest that was near where we lived, and we would be chopping the bamboo down and getting bits of bamboo and making vegetable beds to plant, for the summer harvest. And it was just really nice. All these, just being in a bamboo forest was a nice feeling. And it's like, wow, the echoes and the things that come through that, and all the bamboo. And lifting it and just letting your body really move in a natural way, rather than like the static kind of gym exercises that people do that are more sort of lifting something in the same motion. It's like really engaging every aspect of all the muscles of the body, which is really it's a more holistic approach to bodybuilding in a natural sense. All these things were really fun. Yeah, so the other big thing is the idea of looking after the physical health, in the sense where you start to see the body as a temple, as you wouldn't let anyone walk into the temple. You wouldn't allow anything to just come in, and if you start to see your whole body-mind system as a sacred temple, that you wouldn't want it to get messy and decay. You'd want to look after it and keep it clean and tidy and healthy in every way. And so it's saying, when you look at the ingredients of things, as the vegan message has obviously gone through, people have become more mindful of the ingredients in things. And I remember when I first became vegan, I got very, very good at looking at all the ingredients and knowing what all the E numbers and all the different things were in there. There was a time when there weren't that many vegan labels and the vegan sticker and the logos and things, so you had to really do your own research and go, E119962, what is this? Is it synthetic? Is it this? What does it do? And a lot of vegans, they got good at realizing it wasn't, or it was, or it wasn't vegan, and then obviously therefore we don't want it, or we do want it. But as I learned that, I realized it's actually kind of a pointless skill. It's good to kind of be a bit aware of things, especially the more natural ingredients. This just comes from tree bark or something. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool, I guess. That's not a problem. But it's kind of going, if you can't pronounce the thing, and if you don't know what it is, you really don't want to be putting it in your body. And the part of you that's been tricked into thinking that it's very harmless to put these toxic things in your bodies, it's time to rethink those choices. It's time to reflect. Many beings have not mastered this particular aspect of life and have taken lots of drugs and lots of different poisonous things in lots of different ways, and they will face the consequences of that, not in a sort of you're being punished by an evil god, but by, when you put poison in your body, the body doesn't work as well, So it's It's going, well, do I want any of these chemicals and these poisonous things in my body? And it's starting to figure out, well, what are all these things? Because the whole food system and water system and the general products that people use day to day, whether it's skincare or house cleaning products, it's all been this big toxic chemical soup. And it doesn't have to be that way. And if you think about it, hundreds of years ago, it wasn't that way. People had lots more very natural cleaning and, soap and simple solutions that weren't so poisonous. But the whole food and the water system has been weaponized. As much as people don't necessarily want to face the reality of it, it's something where if you can get people sick and unhealthy, and you can lower people's overall wellness and health and frequency into a space where they don't feel so good, then it's easier to control people. It's easier to sell people drugs like the medicines, and it's easy. You can get people as lifelong customers of needing health care, sick care, and so it benefits the industries who've invented a lot of these things and have introduced a lot of these poisonous, toxic substances. It benefits the profit and the control aspect of trying to control people. So it's been weaponized, and it's time to reclaim the freedom and the health that we deserve. So it's saying, how can I have the most nutritious whole foods in my life? Not these kind of chemical flavored things. It's saying pure ingredients, simple ingredients, the kind of whole things where I begin with, say, a potato, and I eat the potato, as it is almost, and you chop it, and with as minimal processing as possible. Even simple things like pastas and things have been quite heavily processed, and crackers and things, even though they're vegan and they're not necessarily toxic. If they don't rot, then they're not really good for you. The fresh produce, you get a strawberry and it's so full of minerals and life and energy, and it's good, and you pick it, and within about sort of 5 or so days and 10 days, naturally it just starts to go moldy, and the insects and everything wants to eat it because it's good, it's alive. But you could take a McDonald's burger or whatever. I think there's lots of videos about this. People put it in put it out, and nothing wants to eat it. Not even the insects want to eat it because it's so dead and denuded of life, so lifeless and energyless and nutritionless. Not even the insects and the mold will touch it, which tells you something. So I'm a big fan of saying, let's look at the most nutritious, healthiest, freshest stuff, and trying to get as much of that as possible in our life, which is why gardening and farming and growing your own food is important. And even if you can't do that, it's saying, well, it's something that I've been doing for a couple of years now, which is this microgreens, the kind of sprouting, taking sprouting seeds. I do it now. It's the winter, obviously. Even though it's cold, and outside we've got herbs and we've got lots of sort of like St. John's wort, and we've got kale and things. But there's minimal things to harvest in the garden. But I can grow all these different kinds of sprouting seeds. And when you do that, they're literally alive, and they're as fresh as they can possibly be, and you're eating them, and you're taking in that all the light energy and stuff that's come into it, and all that. The seeds themselves are really powerful. So it's the seeds and nuts. Get the seeds and nuts in, and because they're designed to store the energy for a long, long time, so that in the following year, all that energy that's been stored then can come out. As much fresh produce as possible, and more raw food is I think a good idea in terms of overall health. So I try and have lots of stuff like smoothies are good. But yeah, that's a big topic. I think people have really got into the nutritious, how to live a whole foods, healthy, plant-based, vegan lifestyle. And then the thing that I've got really into recently is the idea of the contamination of food. Is shocking, and it tastes awful, especially when you have food you've grown yourself that's like purely veganic, where you've made it completely from your own, you've got your seeds that you've collected, and you've done your own thing, and you've made your own compost, and you've got your proper system, and okay, these carrots are real carrots, and then these things that are like 12 cents or whatever in the the really cheap things, they're so full of poison, the soils and things, that contamination is your body knows how to process it, and your body's doing a very good job at processing it, but wouldn't you want to use all that energy that's been used to heal all the poison, to try and heal the damage from the poison, and over time that causes a lot of damage? Wouldn't you want to have that extra energy to put it into your own healing of your mind, and putting it into your passions and the things you love, and your work, and the things that you prioritize, the people you care about? So I think for me, the organic idea, as much as the supermarket organic stuff isn't necessarily purely chemical free, it's a positive step, and you're voting for something that's in the direction of that place. And if people don't demand it, then it won't exist. And ultimately, it's empowering yourself to say, I don't need to find all these ingredients externally. As much as that is helpful, it's saying, how can I provide my own version of it? So it's saying, how can I make my own things, like growing your own sprouts, or starting to grow, herbs on the windowsill, and people can grow herbs quite easily. And just something, even though it seems like a very simple step, having your own fresh herbs, having something fresh and raw and alive in every meal, even if the rest of your meals are a bit sort of dead and, overly cooked, contamination filled, you're beginning to step into this more sort of vibrant health space. So whole foods, organic, I think the organic thing is very important, and I think I'm going to make more videos about that, because the main obstacle that people have is that, as unfair as it is, the other foods become so cheap that the other thing feels very expensive, and people see it as unaffordable. People's lifestyles have been built around prioritizing technology like expensive phones and televisions and gadgets over the fundamental things like healthy, nutritious food that's good for you and contamination free. And I realize when I grow things myself, there's no way I would charge anyone any less than a certain amount for my own homegrown carrots, because I know how much love and energy I've put into that. And obviously I'm not a professional farmer and I don't have a large amount of land, but knowing what it is to grow your own food, I realised that even the organic produce is a bargain. Even these organic blueberries might be super expensive, but growing blueberries is an art. Growing blueberries is a fun thing. We've got 3 or 4 blueberry bushes now, and we always get loads of blueberries. So that's why, if you're going to grow something yourself, grow the things that are the most expensive in the shop, and then you have the bonus. But your body and your overall health deserves you to invest in it over things that, say, people invest in that they prioritize that aren't good for their health. So it's starting to look at the priorities, because for me, health and peace and joy is the most important thing, because when you've got that, everything that you want to do becomes fun and easy. When you're feeling sick and full of dis-ease, everything's a struggle. Even if you have a passion, you can't really execute and do things. I want to also talk about water. So if people are drinking, the typical tap water, it's probably full of a lot of fluoride and chlorine and dodgy chemicals, poisons and things that you don't really want in your body. And I've become very careful to avoid that as much as possible. I refuse to go to say like a cafe, because I think there's a very high chance that it's the tap water that I really don't want in my body. I don't want that fluoride and chlorine and things. And as you stop having it and you have more pure waters, the taste of those waters becomes very obvious, rather than just the sort of normalized thing that you always have. But it's very toxic for the body. And with the fluoride thing, it's the same with the toothpastes. People have been trained into thinking that you need that for good, good oral health, the fluoride poisonous stuff. But it's having not had that for a very long time, I would say it's all lies, and It's just a bit of a scam to get people taking in the toxic chemicals, thinking that it's for their health, you know. And it's just an excuse to put it in the water. But it doesn't do so much good for your brain, so watch out. So I recommend getting a good water filter that takes out the fluoride and other things. I've used the Berkey filter for a while, but then we found, one of my friends introduced me to a local-ish spring, so I've been basically getting most of my water from this spring, which is very, very good. And yeah, if you can find something like that. I mean, the bottled water, I think they maybe add extra things to kind of supplement the water in a way, which might or might not be good for your health. So I think trying to not be completely reliant on the bottled water, although it probably is a much better option compared to the tap waters. So just be aware, because water is a big part of your body. It makes up, say, 70-80% of the whole of your system, and it's a good conductor of charge of things. So it's like allowing a lot of the body processes to go to go smoothly. And so if you want everything to work well in your body, I think water's a fundamental thing. So yeah, the last thing is looking at the things that you're putting on your skin, the things you're taking in through the skin barrier is it goes straight to the blood. And when I was researching and learning about aromatherapy, one of my friends who studied that for a long time, she said, don't put too much essential oils on, because it just goes straight into it and it has the opposite effect. And I was like, oh really? I didn't realise. And she was going, just like the oils, they just go straight into your blood. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah. And it's like, how, this is like just as much as eating it, it's pretty similarly going in, your body's absorbing it. And I thought, well, if in my body it's just the essential oil or whatever itself is going in, obviously that's a medicinal thing if it's a plant extract, but it's hang on, all the the hand soaps, if you look at the ingredients of those, take a moment to have a look at the ingredients of those hand soaps that people have, all these antibacterial things. You don't want to be drinking that, you don't want to be eating it. So why would you let it on your skin? And why would you let it go into your blood? I mean, there is an effect to this, especially in the long term. Possibly once in a while using these things isn't a big issue, but because your body can detoxify very well, because your body loves you so much. Yeah, even though we give it all these poisons, it's quite shocking to look at the things, the skincare and the products that people use, and how poisonous they've become. And these ingredients, if they are being absorbed in you, you're literally lathering them on yourself, and they're absorbing into you. That build-up, do you really want to be giving your body that kind of stuff? One of my policies almost is, if I couldn't eat it, if it's not something I could physically eat, then I wouldn't really want to put it on my skin. And there comes a point where you say, there aren't that many people making these kinds of things that are that pure. So for me, I decided to just make them. And then recently I've been starting to sell them on my Etsy page. So if people want to look at them, they're obviously available there. I'll leave a link. But it's just saying that, how can we avoid as much toxicity as possible? How can we have the most kind of organic, natural stuff, so that we're nourishing and energizing our bodies, rather than poisoning them and giving them more of a burden, more things to detoxify, more poisons that they're going to have to handle, and more things that are going to build up and eventually become problems later on, when you'd rather have that energy spare to put it into your dreams and the things you like. So I'm really passionate about the things I've made, because I make toothpastes and like hand balm creams and lip balms and moisturizing things, and I've tried to make the things that I've used for myself, because I always experimented with these different kinds of concoctions, just mixing some kind of simple essential oil with these sort of basic simple ingredients like mango butter and things. Mango butter. And when you use these kind of things, like hemp oil, I would happily have hemp oil on my skin. I'd happily drink hemp oil, or avocado oil or things like that. And I go, well, if I wouldn't want to eat it, it's not going on my skin. So I've made these things, and now I'm starting to share them because I was giving them to people, and I realised that the world really just needs more of these kinds of things, and they need to become more mainstream. So my policy is to bring to the world the things that the world needs, even if they don't realise they need it yet. So it's a big passion of mine now to try and get people to be more self-loving to themselves and self-loving to their bodies, and say, well, as much as the more natural products are more expensive and they're harder to find, and you have to make more of an effort to search for them, rather than just every shop having these kind of very standard products, whether it's food or whether it's cosmetics and things. It's saying, well, even though it's more effort and it's more money and it's more things, isn't that the kind of investment that I would want to put into myself to give myself more of a chance of having a happy, healthy life? And if I want to send a message to the world and to, into my life and practice something that's valuable and meaningful, wouldn't it make more sense to do something self-loving rather than something that's careless? Because we've already realized that careless choices and careless decisions and habits just leads to very big atrocities in the world, these industries that are careless, that are based just on profit and just on making the most and having the most and being the most and all these things. It's time to now step back and us to start making our own things and start learning how to make your own things, make your own jams, make your own grow your own food, and start to make your own skincare and different kind of household products. Household products is another thing. I've always made my own little things. Maybe eventually I'll begin to share those kind of recipes and those kind of things with people as well. So it's saying, those self-loving options are important. I've talked about health. I just want to encourage people to get away from say like social media and violent things and films and things that just make people feel bad and make people feel scared, and stuff like horror films and things. They're just generally not good for your overall mental health. They take you into this fearful energy space, and if you can get away from that and start to fill your mind with things like nature and things that are more peaceful. It depends what you want though, because if people aren't ready for peace, people aren't ready for joy, the suffering will take you into a moment where you say, I'm done with this. I feel awful, I feel sad, I feel frustrated, and I feel sick and tired, and I'm done with this, and there must be something else. There must be another way. And I'm now appealing to those who are asking for that other way, to say that I've experimented with the other ways and they feel good. So here we are. Thank you everyone for listening. I will see you in another episode, and I appreciate you all listening. So bye bye. Thank you.